just what is it that makes Gojira so heavy? If you ask me, the answer to that question lies in the powerful simplicity of their riffs. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Hey there kids, it's your good buddy, Uncle Ben. You know, I've been listening to Gojira for like almost 20 years, which is kind of insane. And so naturally I'm overjoyed to see how many people are becoming new fans of the band because of their incredible performance at the Olympics. Since their performance, the band has been blowing up, and all of my Gojira videos that I've ever done here on my channel have also been enjoying a little bit of time in the spotlight, especially my Stuff Gojira Does video that I put out years ago. So it seemed like a perfect time to me to make a new video celebrating how freaking awesome this band is and introduce their new listeners to exactly what it is that makes Gojira heavy. As always, this video is brought to you guys by everybody who supports my channel over on my Patreon page, patreon.com/BenEllerGuitars. Sign up today for access to all kinds of bonus goodies like additional videos, backing tracks, downloadable tabs. Was that a banana? This week, everybody who supports my channel, even for just $1 a month, is going to get access to all kinds of goodies to go along with this lesson, like downloadable tabs that I made to go along with all these sick riffs, plus an ad-free extended cut of this video with more riffs, more knowledge, and more better goodness. And because I'm using recreations that I made of so many of their tunes, this video will almost certainly get demonetized, which means I'm not making a penny off of it. So if you enjoy what you see and you want to get access to tons of good stuff, sign up today over there at patreon.com/BenEllerGuitars. Gear-wise for today's video, I'm going to be using my beloved Dunable Cyclops here, which has Bareknuckle Riff Raff pickups in it. It's one of my favorite guitars that I own. And I'm playing that today through my Synergy rig. And I'll be giving you guys some details about what modules I'm using and how I'm running them later on in the video. Now let's talk about how those French boys make noise. Let's get you guys introduced to some Gojira trademarks by taking a look at this riff from the heaviest matter of the universe. It comes in at about 1:50 into the song. So the first thing you're going to notice is, just like two of my other favorite bands, Ghost and Mastodon, Gojira tunes their guitars down one whole step. This is known in some parts as sad but tuning. Also known as motley tuning. Gojira's skill is the ability to craft incredibly catchy, brutal riffs out of the most simple ingredients possible. That riff just uses two main things here. It's got inverted power chords, which are just played on the bottom strings with one finger, and that big ass pick scrape. That's kind of a Gojira trademark. They use that all the time. But it's the simplicity of the entire thing that makes it so memorable and heavy. I think there's a lot of guitar players out there that are very technically minded that would look at a riff like that and be like, well, hell, I could write that, you know? And I'd like to refer you guys to the Jackson Pollock principle that one of my art teachers in college turned me on to. People look at abstract work by guys like Jackson Pollock and say, well, I could have done that. And that's exactly right. You could have, but you didn't. And that's what I love about Gojira. They're willing to do stuff that is dead on simple as long as it sounds cool. Every now and then those French boys will take that low D string that they got and tune it down an additional whole step for drop C tuning, which is more heavier. If you want to hear that in action, be sure to check out their tune, The Infant Sausage. L'Enfant Sauvage. French is a silly language. Personally, I think it's a feat of engineering genius to be able to write such a kick-ass riff that's only one note the entire time. The things that make that riff sound so awesome are the accent pattern of the palm muted and not palm muted notes, as well as, most importantly, that drum part, because what's going on back there makes this riff so much cooler. For example, let's take that exact same thing and reprogram the drums into more of a let's say Lars style drum beat, and you'll notice it doesn't quite have the same appeal. It's really the total package that sells you there. It's not just one instrument in particular doing something really awesome. It's the way all those things work together. And that's something that I think more guitar players should get in the mindset of thinking of that whole big picture scenario, where what's going on in the guitars might be really dead on simple, but with the coolest drum part behind it, it might become something absolutely awesome, like that one. The first Gojira song that I ever heard was Ocean Planet, and it kicks off with this colossal riff that's really simple and features a bunch of inverted power chords and pinch harmonics. Now most of you guys know your standard power chord, right? You got a root, you got a fifth on the next string. What Gojira does whenever they take that power chord and invert it is to simply take that higher note, the fifth, and move it down an octave. So it's the same two notes as this, just shuffled around in a different order. It might seem insanely simple just to mash on the bottom two strings with one finger like that, but it ends up producing this colossal sound that Gojira uses all the time. I've got a whole lesson about how to play the intro to Ocean Planet here on my channel, so be sure to check that one out later. I also got to point out some awesome stuff that happens in the outro of that song. Check this one out. Just like Metallica, Gojira are amazingly resourceful songwriters, and rather than just introduce you to a new riff that has all kinds of different elements in it than what you've heard in the song so far, they'll repurpose things that they've already introduced you to earlier in the song. For example, that first riff in Ocean Planet started with the descending chromatic one-finger inverted chords, right? And of course it had that big juicy pinch harmonic in there as well. So whenever it came time to wrap the song up, rather than introduce a new character in the third act, they just repurposed a lot of those same elements into another sick riff. They use that sound all the time in their riffs, and you can make that happen by turning your pick so that you're scraping the side of it all the way up the strings. You want to have your left hand here in a harmonic hot spot, like around 3 or 4 where they're nice and high. If you go up to like 5 or 7, they're just too strong. You need those weak, high-pitched, nasty ones that live down here in this area of the neck. You'll notice in that song that those pick scrapes sound like they go on for eternity, like they're playing a 100-string guitar and just raking through all of them. That's partially because they're using a little bit of reverb on their tone. It's not like a totally super dry, tight sound like a lot of metal bands use. It's got a little bit of echo on the tail of everything. I've always liked putting a little bit of reverb on my tones. It just makes everything sound like it has a little bit more depth to it. I want to take a second here and talk to you guys about Gojira's guitar tone, which is amazingly heavy, and there's not really much to it. And of course they have that amazing neural archetype plugin that you can get if you want their sound right away. I'm playing today through my all-tube Synergy rig, and I wanted to kind of split the difference between their earlier tones and their later tones. So I've got 2 different modules in here, and I want to tell you guys about them. One is the Synergy DRECT or dual rec model. I've got a whole video about that here on my channel. Kind of sounds like a Mesa Boogie dual rec. and the other one is the Peavey 6505 module. The dual rec is more loose and scooped and big and bassy sounding, and the 6505 is a lot tighter and more mid-focused. So I'm kind of getting a full range of tones by using both modules. I basically quad-tracked it, so I recorded the guitars twice with the 6505 as the main tone, and I recorded 2 more passes with the DRECT module, and I panned those left and right. And that's one of the really cool things about using the Synergy stuff, is here in the studio it allows me to basically switch between 2 completely different amps super fast without having to switch out cables and all that kind of jazz. Let me just scan through them here so you can get an idea of what they sound like. I've always heard a lot of inspiration from death metal bands like Morbid Angel and what Gojira does. And one of the best examples of that is that intro riff to In the Wilderness. It's got the gallops, it's got the fast tremolo picking, it's got the blast beats, a whole bunch of metal tropes. And this is one of the things I really love about Gojira, is that they're not afraid to use things that are tropes of the genre. So many of us, myself included, will come up with something that we think sounds cool and then second guess it because it reminds us of something else. Or, you know, Slayer used that gallop pattern back in 1962 or whatever. But some things just never go out of style. I know for myself, anytime a new pizza or burger joint opens up, of course I'm gonna go check it out. Even though I've had those things 8 million times. It doesn't make them any less good. And I wanna see what that restaurant does with those ingredients that I've had 1 million times before. In essence, Gojira riffs are just like the perfect greasy slice of pepperoni pizza. You've had it before, but you've never had it this good. I think the good thing about a trope is that it instantly puts you in the headspace of where you are musically. You hear palm muted gallops, you know you're in the realm of metal. And that's not a bad thing at all. It's like seeing sand at the beach. Of course you expect it to be there. It's why you went there in the first place. Unless, of course, you're Anakin Skywalker.
I don't like sand.
So I'd encourage all of us to embrace the tropes. Don't worry about the fact that maybe you've heard somebody else use an idea before. How would you use it? Your voice is your currency. That's what makes your musical thumbprint yours and yours alone. One of my favorite things that Gojira does that makes their stuff so heavy is their use of space. The riffs aren't just jam-packed with as many notes and techniques as they can throw at you. They have a little bit of room to breathe. There's a riff at about 3 minutes into the song Dawn that's a perfect example of that. Check it out. That's another super simple riff full of tropes that any of us could have written when we've been playing guitar for like a year or less. But when you hear it all together as a band, it just slams. And this is something you've got to understand about Gojira. Their stuff sounds great live because it's so simple. I can't tell you guys how many super technical, uber complicated bands I've seen live that just sound like a mess. You can't tell what's going on because everything's so complicated and fast. But I'll never forget the first time that I saw Gojira. They were touring on the Way of All Flesh album. They came through Knoxville here, and I saw them at a really small venue, and I could not believe how good they sounded. These riffs live in a live environment. They sound so good filling up a room of any size. And they're simple enough to where you can hear all the details and how tight the band is playing, even at 120 dB. If you've not seen this band live, you owe it to yourself to check them out. They always sound incredible, easily one of the best live metal bands on earth today. One of my favorite things that Gojira does in their riffs is give you something really familiar like gallops and introduce it to you in a new way. Check out that intro riff to Backbone for an example of what I'm talking about. It's gallops right on the downbeat, Slayer style, but with this cool moving melody underneath it. Is something familiar that you know, but just presented a little differently than how you've probably heard it used before. So there you go, guys, a handful of the things that make Gojira sound so gosh darn heavy. It's all about embracing the simplicity, not fearing tropes and traditions of metal, and thinking about the big picture of stuff that's going to sound amazing when it's all played together as a band. But I'm sure I missed your favorite Gojira-ism, so let me know what it is down in the comment section below. And let me know what other bands you'd like to see similar videos about in the future. You guys can get the downloadable tabs as well as the super extended ad-free cut of this video over on my Patreon page, patreon.com/BenEllerGuitars. Sign up today, even for just $1 a month, you're gonna get access to that stuff and a ton more goodies. Thanks so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and ring the bell for notifications every time I upload a new slice of fried gold. Now get away from the computer, grab that guitar of yours, and start writing some big-ass, simple riffs. Get into it. Less clicking, more picking.